Welcome to the Drummergy Podcast, episode 138. I'm your host. I always get choked up when I talk about myself. Fred Rock Fisher here. Today's episode, we're going to talk about drum rudiments and how important they are, or are they important? Those kind of things. How much focus we should give the drum rudiments, because there's a lot of them, and different drummers think about those things differently, and especially different teachers. But before we get into that too deep, I just wanted to give my condolences to family and friends of Sean McKinnon, who is a drummer friend of mine up in Canada, in Nova Scotia, who passed away apparently yesterday morning or sometime late Sunday night. I don't know any details whatsoever. All I know is I saw that he had passed away, which was really unfortunate. Very cool guy, very good drummer, and had a podcast called Barstools and Band Talk, and another one called Rim Shots with Sean. And Sean was a big supporter of my show, the Drummergy Podcast here. He kind of had been along with me for the last 2 years, watching and commenting, and he and I had just talked a few days ago about being on each other's podcasts, and it was just a little strange to wake up and see that he was gone. So my condolences to his family and friends up there. You can find Barstools and Band Talk on YouTube, no problem. Lots of great content out there. He interviewed a lot of really great drummers, and just, whenever you hear about somebody passing away, you can't help but feel a little bit of a shadow over your heart when those kind of things happen. So God bless Sean McKinnon. Okay, I don't want to be too much in the downer dumps, but yeah, he was a nice friend and a great supporter. We supported each other, and just unfortunate. Like I said, I have no details about what happened, so we'll just leave that alone as far as that goes. As you know, I like to talk about goofy holidays. There's just a few, and then we'll get into this drum rudiments discussion. Today is National Underwear Day. See, there's a holiday for everything, right? National Underwear Day. I'm a boxer briefs kind of guy. I did spend a little bit of time being a boxer guy, but boxer briefs are where I ended up. Yeah, I've never been the commando because it's National Underwear Day. So there you go. Please wear underwear. It's also National Work Like a Dog Day. I don't know how that's a good thing. Usually when you hear about somebody working like a dog, that sounds miserable. And so, yeah, I don't know if that's such a great day. And then today is also National Oyster Day. I can tell you 100% I've never eaten an oyster. I've had clams, and I've had calamari and things like that. I can imagine that it's probably similar in that category of seafood. Excuse me. So it is, what is today? August 5th. I am 4 days away from the 1 year anniversary of breaking my leg when I was in Indianapolis, Indiana. That's a mouthful. Last year is when I broke my leg, spent a week in the hospital, 2 surgeries and such. And I am about to leave to go back to Indianapolis for the Drum Corps International DCI Drum Corps Finals at Lucas Oil Stadium. And some of you may know, a week ago, Monday, I slipped and fell right outside of my studio here and bent my leg up underneath me. And I know for sure I've got to have some pulled muscles up in my thigh and around my knee. And currently that feels like a setback because it's very, very sore. It's extremely sore. The swelling has gone down a lot. It has still more to go to catch back up to where I was, but I'm currently walking like I did 3 months ago. So, yeah, the whole comments about wrapping myself in bubble wrap, that has been a pretty common thread among people to take care of myself. And of course, I will not be riding any scooters this year. But I am curious because I remember over the last 2 years that everybody rode those on the sidewalks. Nobody was riding them in the street. There's too much traffic to be riding them in the street. However, I think the terms and agreements that you quickly agree to when you rent those things is that you won't ride them on the sidewalk. So I'll be curious to see how many people are actually riding them in the street. I doubt it's many, if at all. And then I'm going to go back to the scene of the accident just to look, because the last time I saw it, I was on my back and screaming and yelling and being picked up by an ambulance. So that'll be some of the stuff that I'm doing, along with, of course, watching my son perform with the battalion, Drum and Bugle Corps. He's in an open class. So last night and tonight are the open class finals. And you know what? I think they're happening in Michigan. I might be wrong. Somewhere over there. Maybe it's Ohio. I think it might be Michigan. But anyway, see, I don't have those facts ready to go. But in the open class finals, there's the 3 top scoring groups are Spartans, Gold, and Battalion. And my son is in Battalion playing tuba. He's one of 12 tuba players. And this past few weeks, they've all been within 1 to 1.5 points away from each other, those top 3 contenders. As of last night, Battalion was in 3rd place, but they were 1/10 of a point away from 2nd place, and they were 1.85, not quite 2 points away from 1st. So they really have a very, very strong chance of knocking Gold out of the 2nd place and being 2nd. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Very exciting. And then, of course, then in Indianapolis, they'll get their shot at scoring big there. I know last year they were scoring high enough that they went from prelims to semifinals, which meant they played on Thursday and then they advanced to Friday. And I'm very, very confident that will be the case. However, last year they were the very first ones to perform on Friday. I think they'll play a little bit later this year, based on how they're scoring. So it'll be really interesting to see and excited for them and all of that kind of stuff. I guess in their battery section, they are in 1st place. So they're scoring very, very high with percussion. So good stuff. Good stuff. That's about all I have as far as catching up with current events. Now let's get into drum rudiments. Raise your hand if you know what a drum rudiment is, especially if you're a drummer. You should, even if you feel like you didn't learn rudiments, if you know singles and doubles, then you know 2 rudiments for sure. What are drum rudiments? What are they? And so in preparation for this, and let me preface this whole thing, first of all, because it's funny that as people kind of come and go in and out of the show, they miss some information. And yes, I think that rudiments are important to learn. Yes, I'm not dismissing them whatsoever. I think the larger point will be like how intensely do I think they all need to be studied? It depends on what your goals are as a drummer or a percussionist, on how many of them that you need to know. First of all, I'm a believer that you can't learn too much stuff. I think the more you know, the more options you have. the more versatile that you can become. But as I go through this, I think I'll bring some of that into the light on like what my philosophies are on drum rudiments and their importance, or how much intense focus needs to be put on them, if any. So the word rudiment means the first principles of a subject. So the basics, right? The building blocks of drumming. Drum rudiments are a set of. So the definition that I found was the drum rudiments are the. Let me get my words in the right order. Drum rudiments are a set of standard, internationally recognized sticking patterns used for developing fundamental techniques in coordination, and provide a framework for learning and mastering various rhythmic patterns. So there's these rhythmic patterns, and they're played in a certain order, in a certain way. Sticking meaning right, left, those combinations, and those are the building blocks for drumming. So our current world we live in has changed so much from when I was, between the ages of 10 and, let's see, how old would I have been? Let me think about this. So I was 10, 11, 12, between 10 and 12 years old. Certain music teachers felt, and it was their way of thinking, that you have to learn all the rudiments before you learn anything else. So there was the original 26 drum rudiments, and that was the big stressful thing, was for everybody to learn those rudiments. Mark Grubert, he says it's rudimentary, my dear Watson. Now I need to go watch Sherlock Holmes today. Boy, could I squeeze that in? Maybe. Exactly. So it was really, I've heard these stories of other drummers who had drum teachers who, the drummer goes to sit at the student goes to sit at the drum set, and they start playing, and then the teacher grabs them, pulls them off the stool, and puts them on a drum pad and says, okay, you need to do this first. I don't think that's necessarily the best approach anymore. It maybe isn't the worst approach. It's an approach, but it's not one that I really get behind myself for teaching. But I feel like when somebody is learning how to play the drums, they have this interest in their mind from not knowing anything to being able to sit at a drum set and play a drum beat and play along to music. I think by and large, that's the goal for most students, is they want to learn enough stuff to be able to get moving forward with something. And so that's my approach also. So I just said a few minutes ago, the more you know, the more options you have. It's like having tools in a toolbox. The more tools you have in the toolbox and how you know how to use those tools can make you more efficient and better in being a carpenter or a mechanic or anything like that, is having those tools in the toolbox. So learning drumming those are tools in the toolbox. The rudiments are tools in the toolbox, and then those give you options when you want to perform something. But drumming, to me, by and large, consists of only two things. Now, are there more than two? Yes. Before somebody comes and goes, there's more than two things. Okay. Two things: singles, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Doubles, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. And a combination of those two things, singles and doubles, are by and large the biggest things that you need to know how to do. And then my other focus is learning three different types of notes and their value: quarter notes, eighth notes, and 16th notes. With quarter notes, eighth notes, and 16th notes, and knowing how to play singles and knowing how to play doubles gives you a pretty big palette of stuff to paint with. Those tools right there will open up so many doors. James, I'm going to disagree with you. Sorry. Learning the rudiments was never designed as learning drum. Okay, well, maybe they were weren't designed for learning drum set, but they're definitely applied to learning the drum set. In fact, the definition I looked up was the building blocks to learning drum fills and playing around the kit. So, and this is good that you said that, James. So I teach drum set, as James knows, and most people know. That's my main focus, is teaching drum set and a little bit of marching percussion. But I also have students who are in band class, in symphonic band and concert band, and they have to know certain drum rudiments in order to be able to play these parts. Okay, so going back to what I was saying, there's 5 things that I teach first: quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, how to play singles, and how to play doubles. Because you need to know singles and doubles in order to play quarter notes, eighth notes, and 16th notes. So, James, my point is going to be, some teachers are overwhelming students with rudiments. I think once you know how to play a long roll, an open double stroke roll, all the other rolls are easy. 5s, 6s, 7s, 9s, whatever the number of drum roll you want to play, just is going to depend on how long you need to play that roll, right? So does somebody need to know how to play a 33 stroke roll? Maybe. All right, James, let's put on boxing gloves, man. I can't get the words out before you're okay, let's read James's comments. James says learning the rudiments was never designed as learning drum set, and didn't say they are not a part of learning, not part of modern learning for drum set. Okay, I got to get all my words out. This kind of goes back to my show about technique, is that some teachers I'm talking about overwhelming students with information. Okay. Some teachers want to overwhelm students with technique, and that they can't feel like they can move forward at all because they're not playing with the proper technique. And so some teachers won't allow students to do things because they're not holding the sticks exactly how they think they should be. Or they're not allowed to play music because they want to focus on exercises, which rudiments are part of playing exercises. And so I think some teachers get stuck in this mindset of, you have to learn all these drum rudiments and you have to play with perfect technique before you can advance to anything else. And I think what's going to happen with that is those students are going to lose interest in the instrument really quickly. And that's not what I want to do. I want students to feel like they can learn something and they can accomplish something. And through that process, things happening, then we can refine and talk about technique more. We can talk about other drum rudiments and introduce those things along the way. It's like taking a trip, right? So you're now on this path, and along the path you go, oh, we need to stop and get snacks. Well, we need to stop and get food or gas or whatever. And you're going to get more information. You're going to get more directions on where you're going to go. So not overwhelming the student with all these words and talking about drum rudiments. And I said I did not say they're not important, but they're hyper focused on, especially the hybrid rudiments. That's where the marching, the kids that are in marching band or want to go on to DCI type stuff, they get pretty caught up in that. Of course, yes, they need to know all of these things, and rightfully so. Let's see. From James, dang it. I got lost in my place here. I had a smooth thing worked out. Let's see. I got to recollect myself on where I was. Yeah, I think I just went over this. I want my students to, I want to get them playing something and understanding some core drumming principles and rhythms. And then through that, interjecting form and technique as we go, and then branching out into other rudiments and rhythms like triplets and sextuplets. Yeah, because there's a gazillion things to learn. But let's say if you want to be a working drummer, you just got to play 1 and 3 on the kick drum, 2 and 4 on the snare, and keep an even 8th note hi-hat going, right? The money-making drum beat that we all know. Should, in parallel to that, teach them how to play blast beats, 30-second notes on double kick drum, and at 250 beats a minute? I don't think so. Not that they can't do that or shouldn't do that, but I'm not going to try to teach them that right out of the gate. So, I'm a big believer in the Stick Control book by George Lawrence Stone. I love that book. You can learn a lot of sticking patterns in there. But the first 5 lines in Stick Control are these. Line number 1 is playing singles, right hand led, right, left, right, left, right, left. And it's all written in 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And really easy to teach that. Line number 2 is exactly the same thing, but it's left hand led drumming. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Then line 3 is your double stroke roll. Right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. Number 4 is also a double stroke roll, but it's left hand led. Left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. Those 4 combined and put together becomes a paradiddle. Right, left, right, right, left, left, left. So you got right, left as your singles, and then a double right. And then you have the left hand led version of that, left, right, left, left. So that's lines 1 through 4 put together become the paradiddle. So those will be the first 5 things that are taught in Stick Control, and I'm a big believer in those. So you're learning singles and doubles, and then another drum rudiment, the paradiddle, right? With those things, you can do a lot of stuff. But do we need to, let's see, where did I put it? This was put out by Bart Robley, who was my guest on the show last week. ASAP drum rudiments. These are the original 26 drum rudiments, the 26 standard American drum rudiments. There are now 40. And then James might know the answer better than I on this is, I don't know if the other, let's see, the other 14 rudiments are hybrid rudiments, or the hybrid rudiments are an addition to the 40. I don't know. James, weigh in. Tell me what's going on. Do you need to know a flam paradiddle? Do you need to? Well, you should probably learn flams. That's one of the next things that come in line, right? The drag, that's pretty easy to teach. But once you have singles and doubles down, all of this stuff is easier to understand. And guess what? The first 2 rudiments, the single stroke roll and the double stroke roll. And then it goes into the 5-stroke roll, the 7-stroke roll, the 9-stroke roll, the 10-stroke roll, 11, 13, 15. Now, I think that, let's see, EMC Productions, which is Eric Carr, he is a pretty big, well-known YouTuber guy, and especially in the drum corps world. A few years ago, he did a similar show to what I'm doing right now. It was like, how necessary are all of these things? And basically, he said, once you know these first few drum rolls, you can play any of the drum rolls. They just last longer. right? And then you have to understand how they fit within the time. But once you can play the long roll, and then the 5 and the 7 and the 9, and all the other drum rolls become easier. James says, I think you're basing this on learning drum set. Drum set is amazing area of drumming taken originally from the 14th century from the Swiss drumming. Drum set did not exist. Then I agree with the basic rudiments being a great tool for building vocabulary on the drum set. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes, of course, I'm basing most of my opinions on teaching drum set because you know what? All 43 of my students right now are learning to play the drum set. Now, within that group of people, I do have a lot. The majority of them are kids either starting band class at school or they're in high school and they're playing in marching band. And some of them are in college and wanting to play, like at Boise State, for example, on the drum line. Should they know rudiments? Yes, absolutely. I want to know how important it is to freak out over if you play an 11-stroke roll or a 13-stroke roll. Do you need to invest that much time and energy into knowing the difference? I think it's pretty easy to know. Once you, like I just said a moment ago, if you could play a double-stroke roll, rudiments from the 14th century. James, are the 26 rudiments from then? Or were there less rudiments then? Do you know the answer to that? We'll wait for James's answer. If you're watching, James Harrison here is a longtime friend and a master drum teacher and knows a lot about this stuff. So if you guys should be following James on social media as well, because he's got a lot of great short, just a few minute long lessons. And he's done a bunch on shuffles recently and a bunch on brushwork. And one of his videos has 4.5 million views. It was pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. If I have a student walk in the door, I'm not going to shove 26 rudiments right in their face. The triple radimacue or the radimacue itself is fun to play, but that's not the first thing I'm going to teach them out of the gate. They need to know singles and doubles. I think Bernard Purdy even has a video out on YouTube that you can find where he said people get so caught up in playing drum rudiments. And he's like, look, you need to know how to play really great singles and really great doubles. And with that, you can learn everything else is going to become easier. But I've absorbed students from other teachers around who got so caught up in things like technique and so caught up in rudiments and so caught up with what else was I going to say? I had something else and it just escaped me. They just overwhelmed these students with these things that they never felt like they could move forward doing anything. And so, you know, I started to say the world we live in, our attention span is so fleeting. It is so short. Try to get somebody to watch more than 3 seconds of any video. It better be pretty stellar. For example, James's stellar videos where he's got 4.5 million views. That's pretty extraordinary. So my point being is that the attention span of people, like, get them in, get them doing something, let them feel like they accomplished something. I think that makes them hungry to learn the next thing. I had a new student start yesterday who's been playing drums already for a long time. Excuse me. And I said, well, what are we here for? What are we trying to learn? See, Joff Stone says rudiments are great, but I want to rock. But see, Joff, yes, but you know how to play singles, and you know how to play doubles, and you know a lot of 16th note based rhythms and 8th note based rhythms, and you're doing really well. And look at you move forward. So this new student I had, I said, well, what are we here to do to start with? Number one thing, he said, I have terrible technique. I know I have terrible technique, and I want to be able to play the drums easier around the drum kit. Cool. So I watched him play drums for a few minutes and went, aha, we got some bad habits. So our first lesson was talking about fixing bad habits, and I got him to play and make a few adjustments on how he was holding the sticks and how his arms were and how his wrists move. And he felt like he had just taken the parking brake off and he was moving freer. And this is a guy that's already been playing drums for a long time. Now, he also has never taken drum lessons from anybody. It's just all self-taught stuff. I think he did band in school, but never had drum lessons from anybody outside of that. But even as an adult, recognizing like, hey, I need to fix this. But I didn't say, okay, let's learn your 5-stroke roll. All right, James says 5 necessary strokes needed. Singles and doubles, yes. Flams, drags, and buzz rolls. All of the rudiments are a combination of those. Yep, I agree 100%. Yep, I get him going, James. I get him going on singles, doubles, then paradiddles, and then flams. And I also do drags. And buzz rolls are part of, I work on that too when they learn their double stroke roll. But yeah, I think I'm pretty much in alignment with those things. But yeah, singles and doubles are the first thing for me, and then paradiddles after that. I know there are a lot of 5-stroke rolls, especially in like middle school band. And so those are something that we work on pretty quickly as well for those kids. Some of my drum people that are more focused on drum set, they hear the 6-stroke roll, and a lot of Motown stuff starts with that 6-stroke roll. And I'm like, oh, I love those 6-stroke rolls. And so we might focus on that a little bit. But I'm just talking about just learning right out of the gate, singles and doubles, and then working each hand equally, just like they do in stick control. So, like I said, tools in your toolbox. I think most common households have some tools, like in a junk drawer or something, some necessary tools they have around the house to do some simple little repair jobs. And I thought, okay, what would those tools be? If you're a homeowner or if you're renting or whatever, think about some simple things that you do around the house. You get some IKEA furniture, for example, or you want to hang a picture on the wall or things like that. What do you need to have in your house? Like, if you had to narrow it down to like 5 tools that you must have, 5 must-have tools, what are those 5 must-have tools? I'm curious before I give you my answers, I'm curious if anybody else wants to weigh in on what those 5 tools are that they must have. And I think of it that same way. Like, if you're a drummer, what are the first 5 tools that you need to have readily available that you need to know how to do? What are those rudiments? So James gave us his 5, the 5 necessary rudiments or strokes that you need: singles, doubles, flams, drags, buzz. There's 5. That's James's 5. I'm asking, what tools do you need to have around the house? Do you need to go out to Snap-on Tools and buy a huge toolbox and have every 1/4 and 1/2 and 3/4 inch drive sockets and all the torque wrenches and every size metric and standard wrenches available, double end open wrenches, box end wrenches, you name it. Do you need to have all of those things? 7 tape measures? Because I have 7 tape measures, by the way. At least that's what's sitting by my toolbox now, is 7 that I know of. James says the hybrid rudiments seem to be added in a never-ending manner. At this point, there's probably at least 60 or more on top of the rudiments. Yeah. That's a higher number than I imagine, but you would know more than I do as far as that goes, because that you've been in that world a lot longer. Is that you, Thomas? I can't tell from I think that's your picture. Hi, Thomas. All right, nobody's told me what tools they have at their house. I'm going to tell you what tools I think that most people would have. A hammer. Yes. A hammer, a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, an adjustable wrench, and a pair of pliers. Like, that was probably the most common thing that people have in their junk drawer for little home repairs around the house. And those people that don't have more tools than that usually borrow from the neighbors. Joff says basic hammer, screwdrivers, and pliers. There you go. Yep. Pretty much what I was thinking. Exactly. So what tools do you need to start playing the drum set? What knowledge do you need to have in order to sit down and play? Even if you just sat down at a snare drum and played a little bit, you would need to know 5 basic things. I think James his list is really good. Yeah. So when I'm teaching, I get somebody. A lot of times they don't even have a drum set yet. They have a pair of sticks. Like, I have to tell them to, they're just waiting for somebody to tell them what to buy. So I recommend getting a drum pad, a pair of sticks. I provide the notebook because I write in that notebook every week. That becomes their responsibility. But I just get them moving. Have the stick in their hand and hit something. That's fun. Having the sticks in your hand and hitting something is fun. And then organizing that so it's not just complete chaos. That's the next thing, right? And then I can say, okay, well, we're going to count quarter notes. They learn quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they go, oh, I left knowing something. I know what quarter notes are, and I can play those. And then we build off of that, learning 8th notes and 16th notes, and then all the 16th note based rhythms. And then we can keep expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding their knowledge. But I do know for a fact that I've had students come in from other teachers, or they're adults that had teachers when they were younger. I think this is kind of like an old way of thinking. Like I've mentioned before, my middle school band teacher was really abrasive to me. I don't know why. And I don't know of other kids that I went to school. I've heard some others that weren't that impressed with him. But I remember, so this is the same guy that told my parents not to give me a drum set. And maybe he didn't like drummers. I don't know, which is strange because he had what was called the NARD card. James, does the NARD card even exist anymore? Is that still a thing? The National Association of Rudimental Drumming. Is that what NARD stands for? Help me out, buddy. I think you know the answer to this. So my band teacher was a NARD card carrying member. And this guy was so hard on me all the time for I don't know why. And had it not been for my own private teacher that I had that I got started with, Dave Goff, I probably would have quit playing drums. This guy was such a jerk. I would practice like crazy. I just loved drumming so much. And this is before I had a drum set. I had a Ludwig snare drum that my parents rented from Dorsey Music that I played on. I don't know how much money my parents spent on renting that snare drum, but I know I had it for a long time. Probably 3 years I had that snare drum. But him being really condescending and talking down to me all the time, just I always felt like I was in trouble for whatever reason. I don't know. I was never a kid that was in the principal's office for doing stuff. I never was a cut up in class or any of that kind of stuff. So why this guy just would single me out and just talk down to me so much, I don't know. But I remember it was getting to the end of, I don't know if it was Christmas break or summer break, but he would stand there with his hand on his hip and talk down to me. And he's like, "You don't even know what a paradiddle is." I'm like, "I will if you show me." Like, just talking down in this manner just had such an impact, a negative impact on me, as you can tell. But he showed me what a paradiddle was. And then he would whip out, I remember him grabbing his wallet and like he was like a cop, you know, in the movies when the cop flashed their badge, it was like he was flashing his NARD card. And he's like holding it in my face. "Do you know what a NARD card is?" I'm like, "NARD card? He didn't explain to me what a NARD card was at all." I had no clue, but he's shoving it into my face like I should know. I'm like, "Dude, I'm 11 years old. Why are you doing this to me?" I did. I had some moments because of that jerk that I was like, "You know what? Screw this drumming crap. I'm not going to do it anymore." It was the saving grace of my private drum teachers that I had that kept me in the mix. But he showed me what a paradiddle was very aggressively. And I remember him grabbing my hands and going right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And I'm like, I'm shutting down, right? I think some kids do that when you're just like overwhelming them. You just shut off. Done. You could be just talking and I have no idea what you're saying. I'm just like, I'm feeling like a failure. You made me feel like a failure, Gail Maxey. James says, "I started on a single drum for 6 months before moving to drum set with the teacher. Would go home and play the drum set on my own." Yeah, I didn't have a drum set. I started playing when I was 10, so I was in the 5th grade. 5th, 6th, 7th, somewhere in the 8th grade is when I actually got a drum set. But I know I had a drum pad for the first year. And then I had this snare drum that we rented probably for 3 years. And then my dad got me that drum set after my teacher said not to. James says, "The National Association of Rudimental Drummers, it's been revised several times, but I'm not sure if it's still actively available." I'm gonna have to dig into that, James. Let's do that. Let's dig in and see what's what. I think that's still the standard 26 still exists, and then now it's 40. I think those big posters that are on the wall, either from Vic Firth or from Vader. I think there's some other brands out there that have those 40 rudiments. A lot of times you see them taped to the wall in the school band room somewhere. I know I have one from Vader somewhere folded up in my stuff. Christian has one on his wall that have the 40 rudiments on there. I'm not saying to ignore rudiments. I think I said that when I first started yapping this morning. But yes, I don't have the 40 in front of me. I just have the 26 rudiments here. Yeah. Paradiddle is probably the paradiddle is most likely my favorite rudiment ever. And I don't know if that was because my band teacher was such a racking jerk about it. But I think it's an extremely versatile rudiment, and I use it all the time in my drumming. And some people might recognize, oh, like even like just part of one, right, left, right, um, all kinds of really cool rhythms that you can come up just moving that paradiddle around the drum set. It's pretty fun. And then let's see, the double paradiddle is fun to play that in groupings of 6. Oh yeah. So James says the Percussive Arts Society expanded it to 40. And then like James said a moment ago, like that's even expanded with all the hybrid rudiments, which in the marching world, and this might be an interesting conversation to have with my son, Christian, who I think will be my guest next week on the show, since he's so plugged into that world right now. Be interesting to get his perspective on these things, because he's not a drum set player. He is a marching snare player. He's since aged out, but now he's teaching that as well. So he's way up on all of this stuff, way more than I am. So it's going to be great to get his perspective, because we are, I mentioned at the top of the show, heading to Indianapolis for Drum Corps finals. And so next week, I asked Christian to be on the show with me, and we were going to do a review or a recap of Drum Corps finals 2025. So it'd be interesting to see what he has to say as far as rudiments go, because he's in that world and I'm in this world. Yes, is there some crossover stuff? Absolutely. But it'll be really interesting to see. James, are you researching this as we're going? Thank you for that. James says rudiments, the original 13, then the standard 26, then Percussive Arts Society expanded it to 40. So, James, you said, did you say the 14th century? Would that be when the 13 started? What did you say? I got to look. Yeah, 14th century. Yeah, I mean, if we're going back to like history of that, yeah, the drum set wasn't around, right? When did the drum set come around? The early 1900s, I believe, when that started becoming what evolved into the modern day drum set. I mean, this conversation would go 8 million different ways, but I think that's the case. I think part of what James is also illustrating here with his comments are the evolution of drumming. We had to start somewhere, and then it just kept expanding from that. Jamie Vink, hello, sir. It kept expanding from that. So, if you played a 5-stroke roll, why not a 6? Why not a 7? Why not a 9? Any number you can come up with, you can make a drum roll out of that. Like, how long do you want this drum roll to be? How long do you want it to last? And you come up with really interesting things in that, just depending on how long you want to do that. And I think James hasn't said it yet, but I'm sure he's thinking it, is that in the world of marching, they are squeezing more and more and more into the same, time frame or framework of music, with these out of this world rhythms, and how condensed the hits are becoming. Like, how much are you squeezing into 1/4/4 measure? And then all your weird time signature stuff that starts happening, like 15/16 and 9/8 and whatever they are. It's just whatever the time signature is, whatever the tempo is, how much they're compacting. You look at the music, it's just like somebody took black ink and just like, where does this all end? It doesn't. It just keeps going. Pretty impressive stuff. Like, imagine, okay, so Rudiments, the original 13, if that goes back to the 14th century, and we're in the 21st century now, what is that? 600 years, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 800 years? Is that right? Each century is 100, right? 800 years of evolution of drumming. It's pretty wild to try to wrap your mind around that. Okay, so my biggest point being is, yes, are drum rudiments important? Yes, they're the building blocks to drumming. They're the ABCs of drumming. Maybe ABCs are a bad example. Let's just say they're building blocks. You have to have a foundation. There's no way of getting around that. You got to have a foundation. What do you do with the foundation? You build upon the foundation. That's the whole reason for having a foundation, right? When you're building a house and you are pouring a foundation, you usually aren't being overwhelmed by somebody asking you what color the kitchen's going to be. So let the foundation happen first, and then build upon that foundation and keep building and keep the building and the learning process. There's no end to it, and there shouldn't be. James says drum corps playing is like the gospel chops of drum set now. Lots of notes. I'll get killed for saying that. No, James, I agree with you 100%. I don't know if this makes me a simpleton, but when to me the gospel chops thing was impressive when I first saw it. I was like, whoa, what is happening? And then I started, as I was listening to it, I'm like, where's one? I couldn't find, I would lose where one was. Just this constant drum solo and extremely fast, just going over bar lines for I don't know how long. It's like where I get lost. It's so overwhelming. It reminds me of when my kids would draw a picture and they'd be really excited about the picture they drew, and they would go up to you and they'd go like this, see my picture I drew? See this? And you're like, whoa, and you take it and you want to like, oh, let me look at that so I can focus on it. That's to me what the gospel chops are. It's just so much constantly. It's like I just listening to it, I feel like I can't come up for air. I need some kind of groove to that. So no, they can kill me along with you, James, if that's the case. It's just really overwhelming, the gospel chop stuff. But that's kind of, especially like in the social media land, right? That's where a lot of the young people are impressed, is by that 30-second clip of somebody just going nuts. Yeah, I've shared some short little clips of me playing live where I'm being a buffoon and throw a stick or whatever, and that'll get a lot of views. Some of the comments are usually like, why can't you just leave that out of, why is that important? Well, because I like doing it. That's why it's important. All right. James says, I think most teachers take what was good in their learning process and pass that on, but discard what they didn't like and adapt to their own teaching style. Well, that's definitely a description of me for sure. Yeah. I don't expect my students to fall in love with drumming like I did. Some of them, it's just for some, this is a thing they do once a week. It's like, I don't know if it's an entertainment thing necessarily, but it's an activity for sure. Like, oh, what are we going to do this week? Oh, we're going to Fred's and we're going to play drums for a half hour. And then that's the end of it for them. And because I know that, then I don't have all this expectation, right? for that particular student. And then I have some students that are just completely obsessed with drumming, and They're just soaking up everything every week. And you watch those students take off like crazy. And how excited they get over their progress. And that, James, you experience that too when a student really excels, and it's kind of cool because you were part of that process, which I think is awesome. So, yes, you have to have some foundational things, but at some point you have to start building. You can't just be focused on foundation only. You got to start putting the walls together and become a serviceable musician, at least that. Get them up and going. I think if we were waiting for everybody to achieve a certain level, you wouldn't see very many people performing or doing much of anything because they haven't mastered everything yet. All right. Well, I think that's enough of my opinions. So yes, are drum rudiments important? I believe so. I believe they're very, very important. But once you know a few, just like James said in his 5, let me recap what James's 5 was. Singles, doubles, flams. Where is it? It's right here. Singles, doubles, flams, drags, and buzz rolls. And then all the rudiments are a combination of those. Yeah. Yep. So that's foundational stuff right there. Get those going and then build upon them. But don't get stuck in only exercise land. Don't be stuck in that world of only learning exercises, because guess what? You become really, really great at exercises, and then you're not great at anything else other than that. I did watch a video last night where somebody was talking about drum rudiments and said something very similar about there's guys out there that they can get on a snare drum, they can play all of these rudiments, and they can do all of these things, but they aren't able to use that in any kind of musical context whatsoever. They got stuck in mastering those, but they just don't know what to do with it. They can't think in a musical sense. That it's very clinical, in my opinion. James says, I used to ask every student if they were going to be in school band, jazz band, or marching band. It would help in determining the possible path with me. Yes, James, I do the exact same thing. It's determining what each student's goal is or what their aspirations are, and then saying, okay, you need to do these things to be able to do that. And then along that path, interject some of these other ideas and things that they can take with them. Put a few more tools in the toolbox than what they might think they need, so that they can have that at the ready if they needed it. It's just like you can't learn too much stuff. The more you know, the more options you have. Thomas says, I'm just too lazy. Now, Thomas, are you lazy, or is it because you completely tore your whole pectoral muscle off your chest that you haven't been drumming? I think it's the you separated yourself into pieces, and we got to get you back here, sir. We got to get you back here because you started making progress, and then that came to a screeching halt with your accident. So let's get you back, man. Let's get you back and moving. It'll be good therapy, good physical therapy for you. Get you back in the drumming gym. All right. I think that's enough of my opinions. Yeah, I really, if I was to summarize all of this, students want to feel like they're making progress. They want to feel like they're accomplishing something. So give them something they can accomplish without overwhelming them with, well, you'll never move forward unless you know the first 26 drum rudiments. Like, not that that's a bad thing, but they can learn that as they're learning everything else and keep going. So yeah, just like James said, asking every student, are you going to be in school band, for example, school starts in 2 weeks as of the date of this video, August 5th, 2025. Or maybe it's a little bit less than that for some people. I've got 5 students right now at different high schools who all in the last week and a half have all walked in with their marching band warm-up packet and sometimes with their first movement of their show music. And so we make this shift. Okay, we're going to do that. So these are my kids that are in school, right? We make a shift towards marching band, and then that's what we work on. A lot of metronome stuff happening. And then guess what? Once marching band's over, then it's this extreme hard turn into jazz band, because now they're working on jazz band stuff. And so then we dive into that world. And then usually once spring rolls around, that's when all the interest in more rock and drum set oriented stuff happens with my students. And then we fly through the summer doing all that cool stuff, and then the cycle repeats again. That's with my kids in school. So guys, thanks for joining with me. James, thanks for all of your help. I really appreciate it, your insight all the time. Go out there and have fun, play your drums, and learn some stuff. Learn some rudiments. And if you need help, let me know. I can help you out. Oh, I had my first lesson with my student in Brazil last night, which was really interesting and cool. And I'm excited about that. James, I will enjoy Indianapolis, and I will stay off the scooters. No, my hotel is a block away from the stadium, so I'm paying for that, but but it's going to be worth it. Guys, thanks for joining me. I will see you next week, and I intend to have Christian Fisher on the show with me, and that's going to be pretty cool having my son on here, and we can have this discussion a little bit deeper with his thoughts. All right, so have a great one. We'll see you next week. Bye.